Good to chat to you again. A week's a long time in rugby league, so there's a few things to go. And if it's all right with you, I think we'll start with Bill Leyland's contract extension till the end of 2028. Just give us your reaction to that news and how good it is to have him tied down.
Yeah, it's good. Bill's certainly earned it. Obviously coming from London, he hadn't been part of a full-time Super League squad. Well, sorry, he was last year, but he hadn't played because of his injury. He was out last year because of his knee. But he's come in and obviously it's been a bit of an eye-opener for him. But he's handling every challenge and, he deserves his extension. But look, Bill's still at the development stage of his career. He still needs to work hard and, go after it so he can maximise and reach his potential. And we're here to help him do that. So, it's great for the club and for Bill that he's extended his contract with us.
I spoke to Bill when he signed the deal. I think it was back in July last year, just before it got announced. And I hadn't heard him speak before, so I didn't really know what to expect. And I was quite surprised at just how hungry he came across for this opportunity, this chance to play for a big established Super League side. How much of that characteristic do you see behind closed doors and in training?
Yeah, you're right. When we first spoke, I spoke to a confident young fella that knew where he wanted to get to, and that's important. I mean, it's important in life, but especially when you want a career, whether it's business, sport. If you've got a vision and you're hungry to do it, and you were going to work hard to get there, then more often than not you do achieve that. And I think with Bill, he's proven that he'd come in, and him and Jez Litten. I remember we were doing boxing at the start of the year, and those two were going at it, and that's great. That's what you want. You want two hookers going after positions and making each other better. And he didn't back down to any of them, and I thought that's a really positive sign, and that's his strength. His hunger. What he needs to do now is just keep working technically on his game. With the coaches, with the senior players, and obviously on his own, because that's probably the area now for me that I want to see him develop is that technical side, having reasons why he does things, understanding how to manipulate a ruck, how to speed it up, slow it down, get a kicking game, that type of thing, because he's willing, he's a competitor, but that sort of gets you so far. That's the number one priority for me is making sure that we have those traits in individuals, but now it's about developing his game. And I think Jez Litten, is a perfect example of that. I think you look at Jez's game. I look at him as a complete hooker, Jez. It was consistency that he needed to work on, but I think you'll agree that, he's been ultra consistent this year in his game. But Jez can kick, he can pass, he can whack, in contact. He knows when to run. And I think Bill can learn a lot from Jez in and around that. But the one that stands out for me where both players can learn from is Mickey Mack in and around. You need to be fit at hooker. At the start of the year, we had one of the toughest days in pre-season, and then look around and Mickey Mack's doing extras. And I remember saying to Jez at the time, you learn one thing from him, take that. It's about doing more, and that's what Bill needs to do now. Bill needs to do more so we can get to the levels that we believe he can get to, because it's proven when you do that, you've got someone that, Mickey Mack, that's played 17, 18 years at the top level. That's what it takes.
You've also brought in two young lads in the last week. We'll start with Declan Murphy. Why was he a player you wanted in your squad for next year?
Look, he's a talent. He's I don't usually get excited by sort of highlights, short highlight packages, because, I might be able to put a highlights package together from back in the day, and someone might think he goes all right, but that was far from the truth. So highlights packages can be deceiving. You can look at highlights packages and go, wow, what a player, but then you don't see what they do off the ball. You end up finding out there's that they don't work hard. They're not. Their effort areas aren't great. They're not competing on every play. So you got to watch a full game, And I've watched, all his games as well as the highlights package. I got excited by that, but it's what he does off the ball. It's how hard he competes. The kid's a talent. There's no doubt about that. And that's what we want to bring in. We want to bring in players that are going to put pressure on other players, and he'll certainly do that. In terms of position, what's his position? I think at the moment he's a fullback, but we'll certainly look at him in a few different positions. but he's a talented player. You have a look at his core skill. He's got that. He's got pace. He's got good feet. He's willing, and he wants to compete on every play. So for me, that's a player that you want to work with. When I spoke to him, he knew where he wanted to get or where he wants to go. So they're the reasons why we want to bring him in.
I was going to ask you about his position, actually, because obviously he's billed as a fullback, but he's so new to the game. He could develop into a completely different player to what we've seen from his few games over at Salford. Is that almost exciting for you as a coach? You don't really know what sort of player he's going to become.
Yeah, it is. I think I gave him an example of Jack Broadbent when I had the conversation. Look, I won't give players guarantees. I'll give them a vision of where I see, where they can get to and where they fit in within the team. But it was the same. I gave Declan the same sort of vision around Jack Broadbent, and that was at this stage. Yeah, I don't know exactly where we see it, but we're certainly going to play in a few different positions. But Jack played centre in a grand final and won a Challenge Cup at fullback, and this kid, Declan potentially could be the same in a sense that what's his best position. It might take a bit of time. He may come in and we go, he's an out and out fullback, or he might be in the halves. But we see him as a nine. Well, we don't see him as a nine. We're going to look at him as a nine as well because he's got pace. He can kick out of dummy half. He's got a great pass on him. And he's willing. So will he put his body in front? That's what we need to be able to see. Once he's in our program, getting back on side. So Hooker's demanding. So we're not 100% sure whether he can play at 9 yet, but potentially he could. So I've just said 3 different positions that we'll certainly look at him. So it is exciting. There's no doubt about that.
He's also had this slightly unusual route into rugby league. He come from rugby union, but has played in both England and in New Zealand. Can that almost have its benefits for a young player because they're coming to the game from an outside angle? They may be reading stuff in a different way.
I've only had a few dealings with union players, but for me, it doesn't matter what they've played, where they've come from. I always look at their attitude, and I look at obviously what we spoke around before was their talent and core skill, but athleticism. But for me, it's where he wants to go. Like for me, he wants to get to the top. He wants to be known as one of the best, and that's what you want to bring in. For us to achieve silverware a couple of years ago, we identified we needed to have players in here that actually want to win trophies. They walk in through the doors and they're here. Of course, they're going to get paid, and they've got to get paid well, and they've got to look after their family. But they were going to want to win trophies, and he's won as well as all the other guys that we have, and we're bringing in that actually want to win silverware. So they're coming for the right reasons. He wants to be the best he can be. Where that is, and we're not sure yet. And I'm not going to, say he can get to certain heights or he's going to be potentially comparing to another player. But I will say that we're getting someone that's hungry, wants to learn, and wants to be the best.
The other young lad you brought in, Kobe Wainhouse, 19 years old, England Academy. He's already training with you. What can you tell us about him as a player?
Yeah, well, he's a genuine prop. We want to bring in some. We want some young props coming through. We need that. So we wanted to bring in someone that we believe can play first team. I've seen sort of enough of Kobe to go that in terms of potential, there is potential there that he can play first team and be part of us for a number of years. But with front rowers, you never know until sort of mid to early to mid 20s, because that's when they develop. That's when they start to, late 20s when they blossom, and play their best. So look, he's only young, and his best years are ahead. So good kid, and wants to be at the club, and that's why we brought him in.
You kind of mentioned it there. The development for a young prop is different because it's such a physical role, and it often takes a couple of more years to develop into that fully grown adult who could compete against other props. You tend to see props coming through a little bit later. What's your development pathway for him? Because 19 is still very young.
Yeah, it is. Well, the key is playing against men, and that's what he needs to do. So whether that's through championship, I know or believe the RFL are working on our reserves to strengthen that. So that's why we have to strengthen our reserves. That's why we need a proper reserves, because this, perfect example of Kobe now, he needs to be playing in a really, really strong reserve grade comp to then, we look at him every week to go, yep, he's ready now and earn the right to play first team. That's how development works. That's unfortunately what we're in the position we're in at the moment. The reserve system can be a sort of false indication of where players are at because there's so many different levels, age groups, and in terms of talent. So, the championship for me is a strong competition. So whether we look at him next year to go out and get some development through there, but most clubs, or believe most clubs will do that because that's the next best sort of competition under the Super League. Ideally, you want the next best competition to be reserves, and then that goes. They filter through that to then go to, they may be League One into Championship, then reserves into first. That's development. That's how it should work.
Just on team news, is Rowan able to play this weekend against his current side?
No, he's not able to play.
No. So obviously that leaves you with a decision to make over your half-backs. I think Jez Litten may be the favourite at this point, but you've also got Morg, Hiku's played there at times this season. Are you comfortable with the options you've got for the next for this week, certainly?
Yeah. We'll put out halves that we believe will go out and do a job. Keep it nice and simple, and as I said, they'll do a job for sure.
Are there any other injury concerns going into Castleford?
Only minor. There might be one that we need to look at the back end of the week and just see where they're at. But overall, we're pretty healthy.
Good. What are you expecting from Castleford on Saturday then?
Look, I'm expecting a spike. There's no doubt they wouldn't be happy with the game they played against St Helens. They always play well against us. I know the game or the scoreline went away from them when we played them last time, but it was a tougher game than probably what the scoreline indicated at the back end. They should have beaten us here round one, so we're certainly not taking them lightly. And they're strengthening their squad. They're getting players in that they want to have longer term. We're expecting a spike this week from what they did last week. But again, I don't worry too much around Cass. We need to make sure that we're on. We need to make sure we haven't played at home for a while. We love playing at home and we love playing in front of our fans. So we're looking forward to putting in a performance that we're proud of and certainly our fans are proud of.
I spoke to you before that Castleford game in June. They've had a change of coach since then with Chris Chester taking interim charge. What was your reaction to Danny Maguire's dismissal there? Yeah,
look, you don't like seeing any coach get the sack or moved on or whatever it may be. Look, Danny was only in a 6 month. I did say before that game we played them, I was on camera saying that they were going to get improvement under Danny after your second year, because then you've got another year pre-season. They obviously made the decision to move him on halfway through a 3-year deal. Whatever reason, we don't know. So, as I say, you don't like seeing any coach get moved on, but especially, Danny, who I work with, and I know, and he was here obviously, but yeah, would have been nice for him to be able to get an opportunity to go again in the pre-season and then be able to prove, that he is improving the side over a course of a couple of years.
Finally, from me, before I let you go, we actually haven't had a chance to talk to you about the expansion of Super League. That happened in the evening after the press conference last week. What are your thoughts on the expansion to 14 teams?
Look, I think, these are all decisions made higher than me. My initial thoughts are how much thought went into it in terms of planning. How far ahead have we planned for this? Was it a decision that was spare of the moment? Will it strengthen the competition? So I think one thing that I say regularly, and I'm not sure whether I'll be able to say this next year, and I hope I'm wrong, but will I be able to say again that, where this competition is exciting because anyone can beat anyone, on their day. Excuse me. And, aside from obviously Salford's situation, that's the case this year. Every team, as I said, we nearly got beat by Cass on round one, and they've beaten Warrington, they've beaten nearly beat Wigan, so anyone can beat anyone on their day at the moment. where's the players going to come from? They're all the questions, I suppose, that need answered, and how strong are those other teams going to be? I hope, because we have 14 elite teams, perfect. You need to grow the game. Obviously, there's reasons behind financially that I'm not privy to. So, we need, maybe that's the reason why we're growing the game. But from a point of view of having elite competition, is it the best to do that? Then I'm not 100% sure. I just don't see how we're going to be able to get all those players. And then possibly, they're obviously increasing teams in the NRL. They're still looking over here as well. If they do take players, where are we getting those other players from? The positive to the 10 quota spots now, initially I wasn't a fan of it because I think, again, do we want players here not getting first crack? I think it's important for the English game that you do give players here an opportunity. But what it does now is opens up the market. So players, you're not paying players overs, but also there is a bigger pool to choose from. So like anything, pros and cons, you can have these discussions. At the end of the day, it's above me. And if it's 14 teams and it works, then happy days.
Brilliant. That's all from me, Willie. I'll pass you over to Matt and Jez if they've got any questions. But good luck on Saturday, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Willie, cheers.
Leo's definitely covered everything my side. Cheers, Willie.
Cool. Thanks, Matt.
Mate, I've got one. Your reputation as a perfectionist is enhanced by bringing a player just for training and bringing a player online just to train. It's it's an extra attention to detail, isn't it? From the outside, it does look excessively, ambitious and as I said, an obsession with detail.
Yeah, he may play, Steve. So he's here to play, potentially get picked. He can't get picked this week, and that loan could go longer. But certainly the initial, there's no guarantees, of him playing if we because he can't play this week. If the team goes well this week, then it makes it difficult to get him the week after. But it's just reasons of obviously bringing him in is bigger than just going, okay, we need a halfback this week. Training is important to us, but that's not just to say that he'll just train and he's not going to get an opportunity to play. He may play, and it could be next week. It could be, if we do extend, it could be after that.
I mean, if Lee win tomorrow night, they go into the top two at least for 24 hours. They've snuck up on everyone, haven't they, in the last 2 months? Yeah,
they're the form team, no doubt about that. They've beaten pretty much everyone at the top, and they deserve to be where they are. So, they're not there by fluke, that's for sure. They're playing well. There's a lot of energy about them at the moment, they're playing well.
I mean, obviously, with everything going on in the game outside or off the field, last Thursday across at Salford, you could have played a pretty straight bat at full time with that interview, and I guess you could have just then 2 minutes ago as well. But obviously, the direction of the sport in this country is of interest to you, and you're not afraid to express an opinion.
Yeah, I'm a rugby league fan at the end of the day, and I care for. I want to see the game do well, and I think, when you get asked, sometimes you can say nothing or say what you feel. As I said, there's a lot that's above me that I'll let go, but I'll have an opinion on certain things, and the reason why I was pretty vocal around last week with Salford, I just think what the players and what coaches going through, seeing Paul Rowley last week, he and I know after the game, he sort of said he's doing it a bit tough at the moment. He's done a great job. We know what a quality coach he is and what he's done for that club. Just sad to see sort of a top four club last year in the position that they're in. Could people have prevented it? Possibly. But I only say things because I care. Doesn't mean I'm right. Get asked a question, I'm going to answer it.
And so I'll ask one more then. You're off to Vegas in February, and obviously the relationship with the NRL, well, it exists. Must be some dialogue there. Are you someone who's keeping your ear to the ground about that, about the NRL and about Super League and about their future involvement? Because it all seems to have gone a bit quiet. Yeah,
not really, mate. I just let if there's anything like that, I'll speak to Paul Aiken and just find out where things are at. But for me, I just narrow focus. Coaching's hard enough. Winning games is hard enough, and looking after 30 odd players and staff, it's that's got to keep that's my main focus. So when things come up, that's what I was saying before. Was that decision made spare of the moment, or was it planned? Do we have plans in place? I'm not privy to that because I'm not across it until I need to be, and that's how I like to work. The main job's the main job for me, and that's looking after the players here and the staff.
Have a good weekend, mate.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Hi, Willie. Can I just quickly jump in with one, going back to something you said a bit earlier when you were talking about Kirby and about what might be best for him, in future seasons in terms of playing in reserves or going out on loan to the Championship. Generally, would you prefer to put your spare players in a strong reserves competition if we had one, or would you prefer to be sending players out on offers quite short-term loans?
Yeah, absolutely. If it's a strong competition, the reserves, then that's what we'd like to do. So when I first came over, I was used to the NRL in terms of you got your jersey flag, and then it goes reserve grade, strong reserve grade, into the first team. So it just feeds into another, and then coming over here, my mindset was just we're gonna fill our strongest reserves, and that's what we're going to do because I was used to that. And then I soon realised, well, sometimes teams are forfeiting. You're playing against kids, so the players that I wanted to play aren't getting developed, and they're not getting any better because they're playing the opposition or whatever it may be, or they're not playing for a month. So the best way for development is to be able to have our academy. Then that feeds into the reserve grade, and that feeds into the first team. If we think a player is best suited to go play championship for whatever reason, I'll look at players. Part of my squad a couple of years ago, they thought they were Super League players because they were part of a Super League squad, but some of those players probably weren't ready for. They were League One players, and that was their level. So then, from there, because we didn't have a strong reserve comp, it was hard to gauge. So then the next level would have been Championship, and then the next level would have been Super League. So that's development. It's players expressing themselves and showing what they can do in a certain comp to then go, okay, he's ready for that next tier. It's like anything, but what we do is we go from academy, so we'll sign players from academy and go, yep, they're part of a first team squad. They think they're first team players and they're wondering why they're not getting picked. So then we say, okay, we'll go play in the reserves, and no one's playing for a month, so they're not playing at all for a month. So I know I've gone around in circles. This is one I am passionate about. This is one that, we'll always have a say around because we need to make sure that we're developing our players, and having a strong reserves will certainly do that, or help do that.
How do we get that strong reserve competition, do we think? Because at the moment, as long as it's the case where, like you say, you don't know what team, different clubs are going to pick out, and you yourself, of course, are going to all of your best players. It's not the best option for them. I guess it just continues that way, like something.
Yeah, well, it'll come from the top. It's the top that organise, that do that, and the resources and what we can spend and invest into that competition, and then that filters through the clubs, and it's putting restrictions in place and around. Okay, well, if you don't get picked in the 17, then all your players have to go play in a reserve grade competition. That's how it works. At the moment, there's no sort of rules in and around that. You can send players on loan, and you can, League Ones, or you go to Championship, and it definitely has its pros at the moment because they're going to play, as I said before, in a stronger competition. But that's the only way. It's the the people at the top that run that competition and say this is how it needs to be run. We invest whatever we can into it, and we say I'm not privy to resources or what we can and can't do there, but that's the way that it needs to be run. This is what direction from top. This is what needs to happen, and we need to follow it. That's pretty simple for me.
How do you manage with all the loans sometimes? It feels like you've got players here, there, and everywhere, like a lot of clubs as well, and then you're bringing players in as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because what we want to do, my biggest, we're a development club. I want us developing players to make sure that, we've got players coming through, and, we are working on our pathways at the moment, but it is a tricky one because we will always put the player first to make sure that they're getting game time. But now, come the back end of the year, you're having conversations around, because as I spoke about before, our training is really important to us. So making sure that we've got 13v13 and the first team can prepare the best they can as well. So sometimes, and it's rarely, that we'd say, no, you can't go out. But, we might have to do that now but we are trying to get as many players out as possible. But then they may play on a Sunday, and then you've got training, your main training sessions on a Tuesday, and some of those players can't train, which then affects your training and preparing the first team, which is the most important for that weekend. It's not your most important long term, but it's your most important for that weekend. So it is a juggling act, and it's difficult, but we are trying to develop players, and we're trying to make sure that they're happy, because at the end of the day, when players don't play, excuse me, they're not happy, and it affects their well-being, and it affects their home life, and it affects a lot of things. So when they're playing, they seem to be a lot happier.
Cheers for that. All the best on Friday.
Cheers.